Imagine your husband of 35 years has just died. The funeral's over, the family's gone home, and now you're left alone. And think about the financial decisions that you've got to make and how pressing they are. Today, we're going to talk about some tips to get you through that.
Welcome to the Ask Brad Show. Be prepared to hear ideas, concepts, and strategies that may challenge the way you were taught to think about saving and investing for retirement. It's time to roll up our sleeves and get to it. And now, the host of the Ask Brad Show, here's Brad Williams.
Well, I know this is not the cheeriest of subjects for a Saturday morning, but one thing about my job as a financial advisor is I've always looked at it as I'm the guy that's got to ask the hard questions and discuss some of the topics that people really don't want to discuss, because these topics affect all of us. Birth, death, retirement. These are things that oftentimes can be emotional, and that each one of them has their own set of hard decisions to make. And today, I'm going to focus on what a widow should do. What kind of tips can I provide a widow that I've learned in my 32 years of experience? Folks, let me preface something up front. When I say widow, I'm also speaking of widowers. A little different set of problems, but mostly the same. It's just how men deal with things maybe emotionally different than women do. But when it comes time to organizing their finances, which is why you listen to this show, very similar. And so we're going to address some of those things today. I've seen many things in 32 years. I've had many clients' spouses die. I've dealt with ex-spouses in that respect, children, and I've been exposed to a lot of different things that people go through during that transition period. And so we're going to break this down piece by piece and take a look at each one and try to provide a framework for you of the things you need to be asking yourself if this applies to you, or maybe a family member. This could be a show that you might want to send to a family member who's going through this. But I guess the most pressing issue is that you have now got to make a bunch of decisions that most likely prior to this you made as a couple. Maybe one of you, had more of a say in things than the other, but it really doesn't matter. Now it's all on you. It's all on your shoulders. So the best piece of advice I would say is, since that period following your spouse's death or significant other may be the most stressful that you've ever experienced, you want to avoid making hasty decisions, especially major financial decisions, because in all sincerity, your judgment may be compromised. So what we're going to address first is those things that need to be addressed right away. And then we're going to transition into those things that you'll need to address in time, and having a set process. So we're going to get started right away. Probably the number one thing would be really handling the death claim, getting the death certificates. Those are real important. You're going to find that as you're transitioning a lot of those accounts over, that you're going to need those documents. So get a bunch of them. Again, we're not talking about a bright and cheery subject today. We're talking about a loss. But we need to make this transition for you as easy as it can possibly be, to where you're not falling into a bunch of financial pitfalls and traps. And so that's the biggest thing, is when you go get the death certificate, get a bunch of them, because you will most likely need them in time. The next thing we're going to talk about when we come back is the types of documents that you need to be thinking about.
At Brad Williams Financial Services, we believe in innovative thinking, and we're not afraid to challenge conventional methods in our approach to managing, investing, and preserving wealth. To learn more about Brad Williams Financial Services, or to set up a complimentary review,
call 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048. Thanks for listening to our show today. In retirement, you only get one chance to get it right, and we know that proper information leads to informed decisions. And that's why we hold free informational workshops in our area every month. Topics like Social Security, RMDs, the latest retirement tax strategies, IRAs, estate planning, and so much more. For dates and times of the next free workshop in your area, just pick up the phone. Give us a call today. Call 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048.
All right, as I mentioned when we got started, the best advice I could give you is take it slow. Don't make any major financial decisions until you've had time to really settle in, and don't make any really major ones for 6 to 12 months afterwards. So one of the things that's going to be important is getting your documents together and Social Security numbers. If you've got will, power of attorney, start getting those together. Go ahead and put your tax returns for the last 5 years together. This is a time to start thinking about employee benefits. So try to grab all you can on if your spouse is still employed when they died, or if they're getting benefits after the fact, so that you can see what they're getting if you weren't directly involved in that when they were alive. Because often what I've seen is there's usually one spouse that handles the bookkeeping or the record keeping and the investing and the paying of the bills. And so when that person's gone, the other one's really in the dark. So getting all your statements together, checking, savings, brokerage, mutual fund, retirement accounts, these type of things. Any stock certificates, although, mostly now things are digital and they're not certificates, but plenty of people still have some stock certificates. If you own your vehicles, get the car titles ready because you'll need to do some work with them. So really putting together all the documents is probably the first step. Second step would be trying to figure out who your team is. Do you have an attorney that worked with you on the will? Go ahead and contact them and set an appointment to have a preliminary meeting with them to begin to discuss the process. If you have an accountant, notify them and let them know what's coming so they can help you get prepared. If you've got a financial advisor, then a meeting needs to be done with them. And it might even be helpful if they knew who each other were so they could communicate. So assembling a team is real important. Now, oftentimes what happens is one spouse handled it. Maybe they use their own particular broker, or they're not in the picture anymore. And the surviving spouse maybe doesn't have a relationship with them. So whatever happens when you meet with them, just make sure that you make it clear that you're not going to make any major financial decisions right away, so that they can take off the salesperson hat and put on the counselor hat, so to speak. And it's interesting, as a financial advisor, I've found that after 32 years, oftentimes I'm a marriage counselor, a family counselor, and in many cases, in my experience, a grief counselor for situations like this. Make sure to, again, get your documents together as much as you can. Keep a list, maybe even keep a little notebook handy by your bedside or whatever. And every time you think of a potential account that you need a statement for, write that down so that you've got a record and a running tally. And then maybe keep a record of when you've fulfilled that, when you've gotten that document, and have it ready. The next thing I would talk about is give it a little time before you close out and retitle some accounts. Because, for example, a checking account, you may be getting some checks later on paid to your husband for certain things they had. And I'm assuming that, the widow is the survivor. No offense to you men out there, and you may need to deposit that check. I had an instance with someone referred to me by my attorney that had a policy through Aflac, through work, that was an accident policy that paid out, but they had already settled the estate, and the check was only I think it was like $5,000. They're going to have to spend about $2,500 to reopen everything and get that reprobated because the bank wouldn't cash the check because the account had already been closed. So make sure you take your time before you start closing and retitling everything to make sure you don't get caught with any loose ends. Now, I know I'm beginning to cover a lot, and there is a lot involved. What I'd like to make an offer to my listeners is I work with my clients in handling this, and I use what I call a beneficiary directory, which I find helpful. It's a way to catalog the things I'm telling you to catalog. I'll be happy to provide for the first 5 callers this week a free beneficiary directory. It's like a $40 value, and all you got to do is call 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048. There's no cost. There's no obligation. You don't have to come in to meet me with that. If you're dealing with this type of situation, we'll be happy to provide that to you with no obligation and no cost. That's 844-343-6048. All right. Now, getting back into it, we've discussed handling the pressing issues, getting the death certificates, getting your documents in order, and these things to do once you've had a spouse die. Assemble your team, or what you have of a team, and be slow to bring another team member in that's not already there. If they come recommended by somebody you know, that's great. Lawyers and accountants are pretty cut and dried. One thing to caution you is that although most everybody in my industry is fine and upstanding and ethical, there are some sharks out there. And, women and men who are in grieving situations can be taken advantage of. So be very, very slow to make any major financial commitments as far as investment changes or anything like that when you're going through the grieving process. Another big thing, pay the bills. If you're not the bill payer, get right in there. You want to make sure those things stay on time. And hopefully you will have done some joint accounts and things like that so that the surviving spouse will have a credit. I have seen from time to time where, you had a stay-at-home spouse and the working spouse had everything run through their Social Security number and they had great credit and the spouse had very little or no credit. And it wasn't that they were a bad risk. It's just that the other spouse did everything. So for those who aren't dealing with this, who are listening, make sure you're starting to develop credit on your own if you don't already have that. I think the next thing is family. You got a lot of grief situations to deal with the family, settling up things. I've told many times that prior to my mother's death, she created a lottery system for when she was gone because we knew she was dying. And, she had a lot of antiques and things like that. And instead of creating a family squabble, we all just sat down one evening and drew lots and we each took turns picking. And believe it or not, folks, the expensive, valuable stuff wasn't the first to be picked. It was typically the emotional, the things we had, memories and things with my mother. So have some kind of system for that, because what you don't want is all of a sudden everybody coming in there and, cleaning the place out. I've known people that, had one family member that lived near their dying family member and come and raided everything. And sometimes kids can put pressure on a survivor to let them have stuff, but just take your time, get your family in check. Another thing is you need to be able to say no. You may have some family members that know you've come into life insurance or investments, and you just need to be able to say, if they ask you for something, just say, I need to take some time to get a handle on everything before I make any of those kind of decisions. Why don't you come back to me in the future and we can talk about it? Because I've seen it. I've seen where, you've got a surviving spouse where the dying spouse left plenty for that surviving spouse, but you have a child that maybe has drug problems or some other kind of problems, or maybe they're just, a mooch. I mean, to be quite frank, hate to use a word like that. They know mom or dad is coming to a lot of money and they start hitting them up for it. And they're already grieving as it is. You don't want those kind of decisions. You used to be able to say no. And if you need a family member to help you, enlist their help. But that's really, really critical. Again, I mentioned the documents. Have a way to organize them. And as I mentioned before, I'm providing a beneficiary directory for the first 5 callers today that'll help with that process. No cost, no obligation, no need to meet with me. This is just a service I want to provide to you if you're going through this. Call 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048. All right. Now, covered a lot of things, taking care of the pressing issues, not wanting to make any big decisions right off once you've lost your spouse. putting together a team, and things like life insurance. Go ahead and file those claims. Once you get those death certificates, file those claims. Now, what I would suggest, and most insurance companies do that now, is don't have them send you a big check. You don't need to be dealing with a big multiple six-figure check right now. A lot of times they'll put it in a money market account, earning interest, give you a checkbook. So if you need some interim money, but that's one of those things you need to wait on until you really get settled in and figure out what your goals are. Contact the employer if they're still employed. If there's any life insurance or benefits there, deal with that. Then you need to start dealing with account holders, brokerage accounts, IRAs, things like this, and start to get the paperwork to begin getting those in your name. And remember, as a spouse, you can roll over the IRA into your account, but you may want to set it up as a beneficiary IRA. That's really your choice. That's something you need to deal with a financial professional on to give you the ins and outs from a tax standpoint. From, if you're below 59 and a half, make sure that you're considering maybe leaving it in the 401k or whatever, or keeping it as a beneficiary, because on an inherited IRA like that, you're not hit with the 10% early withdrawal penalty if you need the money before you're 59 and a half. So those are some of the considerations that need to be made when you're taking care of these things. Your home title, your auto registration. These are the things that need to be handled. These are not the urgent things, but they need to be handled. And so you might even set up a hierarchy list of, okay, these are the most important. I'm going to handle these. You're going to feel a lot less stress if you sit down with a trusted advisor or a family member who may have been through this and, using, of course, the beneficiary directory that I've provided, if that's something you want to use or something similar, to go through a checklist so that you'll have a lot less stress when you know where you stand in the process. So it's all about reducing stress. VA benefits. They may have a VA death benefit. So make sure you get with the VA. There's burial benefits there. You may want them to have some type of VA funeral type arrangement. So those are things to consider. Social Security. This is a big one. If you're not already taking Social Security, then you have decisions to make. And they're decisions that can be very costly if you make the wrong ones. So sitting down with someone who understands Social Security, and not just every financial advisor does, and looking at, okay, do you file under your spousal benefits? Do you file under widows? What is the best strategy to maximize the money that's been put in there? Because all that money in that account is yours. And if you make the wrong decision, you're just leaving your own money on the table. So again, big decisions have to be made in the Social Security realm at that standpoint. A key thing to look at there is, I personally use a Social Security timing report, which takes into account things like that. And it helps my clients understand the ramifications of those decisions. So keep in mind, you got the Social Security decision that you got to make. Now, another thing that often gets neglected is that being in financial planning and using long-term care for many years, a lot of the older long-term care benefits provided a spousal benefit after 10 years. And what I mean is that as long as the premiums have been paid, let's say you set up a joint benefit or two separate policies but keyed in together, depending on the company, and that after 10 years you've got a survivor benefit. Well, it could be that you still can continue your long-term care insurance, but don't have to pay a premium after that. So look in to see if that's the case. If you've got an agent that's still around that sold that to you, they should be able to answer that question. If they're not, then get with somebody who does. That's an area that I've worked extensively in back through the years. Just get with somebody who knows and can tell you that. It'll be in the policy. It'll be easy to understand.
At Brad Williams Financial Services, we understand the struggles that families and business owners face today. We want to help you develop, implement, and monitor a strategy that's designed to address your personal objectives and individual situation. To learn more about Brad Williams Financial Services or to set up a complimentary review,
call 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048. No one needs to tell you we live in an era of financial uncertainty. As a thank you just for listening to our program today, we're offering listeners who call in or log on a complimentary copy of the new book, Return on Principle, 7 Core Values to Protect Your Money in Good Times and Bad, from best-selling author and financial coach David Scranton. Filled with in-depth analysis from financial overprotection to financial fearlessness, Return on Principle tackles them all. Steve Forbes says David Scranton offers perspectives investors should not ignore in these turbulent times. Return on Principle takes baby boomers through a journey of discovery, not blame. For your complimentary copy, call 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048. Or visit us online at AskBradShow.com. That's AskBradShow.com.
All right. Now, we've covered a lot today, and I know this is not a very cheery subject. I've lost family members, and I've had many clients that lost their spouses, and I've helped them through that process. You know, you got to take your time. You got to be systematic, go through the grieving, but don't let everything fall by the wayside. Set up a process, set up a timetable. And if you'll do that organizational part of it or get help with that, the stress will be reduced because you're not laying awake at night wondering if you've forgotten something. You know, I think there's more sleep lost, not by what we did that day that may have been wrong or whatever, but by what we're wondering we forgot about. And this is one of those cases where being organized is going to pay off significantly in less stress and the fact that you're not going to leave money on the table. And people would be surprised at how many life insurance policies go unclaimed because people didn't know they were there. You got to file a claim to get it. So, you know, if your spouse is sick, start getting with them on that. If there's issues going on where, you know that's coming, go ahead and get with that. In fact, you know, if you're listening to this thinking that this broadcast might help somebody you love, think about it for yourself too. Begin organizing. One of the things about a financial advisor too is that even if you love doing the investments yourself and you're what I call a do-it-yourselfer, it's often good as you start getting older to start merging a financial advisor in the process so that they'll be there to take over when you're not, if your spouse is not inclined to deal with those things. Gives you time to evaluate them, make sure they're trustworthy to be able to handle things when you're gone. Because I think in financial advice, that's the biggest thing is, are they trustworthy? So, you know, we covered a lot of getting the list, getting the accounts together, getting your death certificates. And again, the biggest thing is don't make any decisions in the 6 to 12 months. Some people, you know, go through the grieving process quicker than others. But for 6 to 12 months, just let everything kind of coast. Now, what I mean by that is those cash benefits and things like that. You're going to need to adjust your investment process if you've got an advisor and maybe de-risk a little bit, whatever. It just depends. You don't need to just forget about your investments, but you need to not make any major changes if it's not warranted. And there should be a valid reason for that. So, you know, there is a process. And again, I'd like to make an offer for those who are going through this or maybe getting ready to go through this. For the first 5 callers, I'd like to give them the directory I use to help my clients in this aspect, which is called the beneficiary directory. That's a $40 value, and I will provide it to you free, no obligation. Just call 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048, and we'll get that to you. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, I know this is not, you know, the brightest of subject, but it's business. And, you know, just like milestones in our life happen, this is one of those we can't avoid. So be prepared. If it's happened, then get organized, get some help, and it'll make the process a lot easier. Then you can deal with your grief and your loss and not be worried about finances.
At Brad Williams Financial Services, our goal is to develop enduring, long-term personal relationships with our clients, knowing that you have placed your trust in our expertise and dedication. To learn more about Brad Williams Financial Services or to set up a complimentary review,
call 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048.
This is Brad Williams, and I have been privileged to have been an instructor over the last 12 years or so at the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. They have some great course offerings. I'm currently teaching a course that I've written and taught for many years, Changing Face of Retirement in the 21st Century. But that's not all of the courses there. You can learn languages. You can learn hobbies, travel. There are so many things that you can get out of these courses they offer at the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. So check it out today and come keep your brain working.
For more information on the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, call 256-824-6183. That's 256-824-6183. Or email olli.info@uah.edu. The Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. Come keep your brain working. Have you missed any of today's show? Would you like to listen to past shows? We've got you covered 24/7. Visit AskBradShow.com. That's AskBradShow.com.
Investing in the stock market these days is like riding a roller coaster. Leaving a place of safety, get on the coaster, hear the clickety-clack as you experience anticipation climbing to the top of the hill, followed by sheer panic as you plummet back to the earth, hoping you stay on track. You might be brave enough to repeat the process several times, going up and down, but never achieving higher highs and accomplishing nothing but anticipation followed by fear. The stock market has been doing this same ride of volatility with no real growth. Proper education, though, can help you find a better way to grow your money during these times.
Call 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048.
If you've been in the workforce over 20 years, at some point you probably wondered, how much longer do I have to work till I retire? And the older you are, probably the more you think about it. Whether you like your job, don't like your job, that's not what I'm talking about here. At some point, you know you're going to have to retire completely, or at the very least, to cut back on the hours you put in. And that could seriously reduce your income. Today, we're going to talk about the 3 critical steps that you need to take before you retire. And one critical mistake to avoid. That's one thing I didn't add. Let me start with this revelation, which those in retirement already know. Retirement is not a destination. It's merely a transition. You're retiring from a job, not from life. So for most of us, you'll retire and life goes on for many years. In fact, more and more, I'm seeing my clients hit into the 90s. And some even may even be close to celebrating a 100th birthday out there. So if you're going to transition into that life with no set paycheck from your job, there's a few important factors to consider and some critical mistakes to avoid. Now, look at some of the transitions in life. You know, when you look back, you may have changed jobs in the past, went from one job to another. What was different? Well, maybe the route from work, maybe the colleagues that you worked with are no longer there, pay's different. Maybe it's better, maybe it's worth. The culture, you know, that's a big thing, changing the cultures from jobs, attitudes, expectations, they're all different. Well, you know what? Retirement is the same way. But knowing how you want to initially spend your time, what you're going to do with that, if you're going to be involved, let's say with your spouse, your significant other, you know, your collective time and what your goals are in terms of what you'd like to have the ideal retirement to be. Knowing that ahead of time is critical for the success of your retirement. And guess what? It's going to require multiple discussions with your spouse, with your significant other. You know, things like, are you going to stay living in the same house? Are you going to stay living in the same town? Do you want to move closer to the kids, to be near the grandkids? I've seen a lot of my clients do that. You know, they initially think, hey, Huntsville is a place I want to be. I love it here. I've transitioned in and out of here with my job, and now that I'm back here, I want to stay. And then some things happen in the family. Grandkids come along, and maybe one of the children gets a job in another state, and you miss the grandkids on Sundays. And so you decide, you know what? Instead of moving into that retirement community here in Huntsville, why don't we go be near the grandkids and the kids? And that happens quite often. In fact, a lot of clients I pick up are people who are coming in town for that very reason. So, you know, let's think about, what if you want to, say, be golfing 4 or 5 days a week? Hey, you know what? Golfing, like so many other things, costs money. Sometimes a lot of money, depending on where you like to play. How about travel? You may want to go to Europe, Asia. Shoot, I've had a lot of clients take Alaska cruises. That seems to be one of the favorite trips. Visiting kids all over the country. In fact, I think one of the more satisfying parts of my career I've ever had is when I had a client who had been through the downturn in 2000 and was scared. And then when I sat down and compiled her plan and showed her that she had plenty of cash if she would use it properly and she could start visiting those grandkids out west, it was like a light came on and wow, I'm better off than I thought. What I see a lot of my clients do is volunteer, whether it's at the hospital or food bank or any number of things. Mission trips. Even my assistant goes down to Central America every year for a week to build homes in a community through their church. But you know what? They pay for their own expenses there, and that's going to cost money. You know, just like a cruise, just like any other vacation. So the first critical step you need to take before you retire is figure out how much monthly income you're going to need to be able to afford the lifestyle that you want and allow you to be able to do what you want to do with your time. I've often said that the goal for retirement should be to be able to do things based on your wants and not just your needs. That to me is financial success. It's not how much money you have, but it's being able to do the things based on your wants and not your needs. And again, if you want that, you're going to have to figure out how to pay for it. You know, I meet people like y'all out here on a daily basis. And I'll be frank, as great as this society and this country is and the opportunities in this country, only a handful out of every 100 have a firm grasp of their monthly expenses before they retire. Because when you retire, it's without a paycheck now, so you better get it correct. And the sooner you start planning for this, the better. In fact, what I tell a lot of people in my talks and on radio interviews that I have on a regular basis is they need to start thinking about retirement about 10 years beforehand and start changing their portfolio, start looking at income sources, starting to do the groundwork prior about 10 years, really no more than 5 before they retire. Now, one of the things I've done to help people with that is I've created an income and expense questionnaire. And in that questionnaire, it'll give you the things you need to fill out to be able to determine where you are in that process. It's really a helpful tool for everybody. So if that's something that you would like, give us a call, 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048. We'll get that out to you however you desire, email or mail it to you. I think you'll find it very helpful. No cost, no obligation. Now, the reason that this income and expense tool is so important is it makes you sit down and write down what's coming in today and what's going out. And oftentimes, when I sit down with people who filled this out, who've come in to see me, you know, we'll look at their expenses and they're showing expenses and income, and they're showing $14,000 a month in income and $10,600 a month, for example, in expenses. And so then I ask, okay, well, that's great. I mean, that's you're in a great situation. What's happening to the other $3,400 a month? Is it going right into savings? Because that's quite a bit a year you can be putting back. And you know, oftentimes I get a what response? What do you mean? $3,600 a month extra? And then I look at their retirement savings and I go, look, you're supposed to be saving anywhere between $40,000 and $48,000 a year based on what you're showing me. The next question they ask is, what do you mean? Because they really don't know where it's going. So that difference between what they're showing me in income and expenses, turns out there's really no savings. Everything gets spent. Starbucks, dinners out, things like that. And let's just call it the slack. We'll say there's slack in there. One thing they may not be doing is counting, say, trips to Europe every year or helicopter skiing if they're inclined to that or whatever that is that they're spending money on. I even have one client that they love eco cruises, where they go to exotic, expensive places. And that's great. That's great. I have a friend from many years ago. He's retired 3 times and he has the skills, which are very specialized, which kind of allow him to go in and out of retirement as he sees fit because what he has to offer is very valuable. But with a lot of people, once they retire, that's it. They may not be able to get back in. And in fact, especially in a town like Huntsville, where some of the skills are very specialized, or maybe they got a security clearance if they're in the government or related to government work, and they go too long, they lose that edge and they're really not that marketable anymore. So basically, I mentioned the 3 steps. And the first one is figure out your ideal retirement. How do you spend your days, weeks, months? What are you going to do? And project out approximately how much you think that's going to cost you. It really doesn't matter whether you do it monthly or annually. A lot of people find that doing it monthly may be a little easier and you don't end up with gaps. And I want to start with things like guaranteed income sources, pensions, Social Security, things like that. Maybe you've got some business interest or rental income. And maybe if you're lucky, you've got one of those future inheritances that's waiting on you. But whatever it is, you just need to calculate your guaranteed source of income and then the difference between that and your expenses. Now, for a lot of people, there is no gap. They say, well, look, I got all this savings, but I got plenty of income. But others, the gap's significant. And so that's where the proper planning, proper asset allocation really comes into play because you're going to be depending on that nest egg to fund your retirement. So that's what's going to be supplementing your Social Security, your pensions, the money you're pulling from your savings and investment, because in reality, you've given up your paycheck. And what I do for clients is just a math equation. We sit down, add some factors to it, inflation, things like that, and figure out what's coming in, what's going out, and significant life experiences and things that are expected to happen at some time in the future. And then that determines whether we have enough money to pay for it. So that's the key. The key is making sure that you got more money left over at the end of the month or the year, however you want it. And again, like to offer a tool that I find is helpful, which is the income and expense questionnaire. And this is something we'll be happy to send out to you. Call 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048. And could be something, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, might help you. If you're coming in to see me and would like take advantage of free consultation we give to all of our listeners, it'd be a great first start to the conversation in that hour that I give out free. I had a client come in to see me, and you would think, looking at their assets, say at about $1.25 million in savings, you would think $1.25 million, that's pretty good. When we looked at what they were getting from Social Security and what they were expecting to spend, the problem is their spending was projected to be $20,000 a month, and their fixed income sources was about $10,000 a month. So they're going to have to come up with another $10,000 every month to meet those expenses. That's $120,000 a year. Well, think about it, folks. $120,000 out of a $1.25 million gets you 10 years. Do you think that retirement equation works out?
Sorry, Charlie.
That's right. little over 10 years of retirement, they're broke. So the key then is knowing what is expected ahead of time. Because if they did that, they might realize, well, maybe we need to work a little longer. Maybe we need to save more in the interim. So those are the key things that are very important.
At Brad Williams Financial Services, we believe in innovative thinking, and we're not afraid to challenge conventional methods in our approach to managing, investing, and preserving wealth. To learn more about Brad Williams Financial Services or to set up a complimentary review,
call 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048. Thanks for listening to our show today. In retirement, you only get one chance to get it right, and we know that proper information leads to informed decisions. And that's why we hold free informational workshops in our area every month. Topics like Social Security, RMDs, the latest retirement tax strategies, IRAs, estate planning, and so much more. For dates and times of the next free workshop in your area, just pick up the phone. Give us a call today. Call 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048.
So as we're getting back into income, one of the things that's resounding here is knowing what you're going to need for retirement and where it's going to come from. I kind of call myself my client's GPS because, most people don't realize an airplane's off course most of the time, and that GPS is bringing it back onto the right compass heading, making simple, subtle corrections instead of the big ones. I'm kind of passionate. My clients would tell you that. And what is key is knowing in advance what's coming. So I would say probably 85% of the people out there suffer from financial anxiety. And what I try to help my clients do is reduce that financial stress, that financial anxiety down into simple steps. Create more income, putting that into an actual number, doing some simple cash flow analysis for early retirement, later retirement, deal with the effects of rising costs due to inflation. And then a big cost, which I've done on many shows, is healthcare costs.
Calling Dr. Howard, Dr. Klein, Dr. Howard.
So, that's key is having a plan in advance. I don't know anybody who decides to go on vacation, who just climbs in the car, points their car north and heads to the mountains in Tennessee and expects to get there. So what's key is I sit down, do a full review, show people some smart strategies. And some of those smart strategies are truly smart. Strategic movement around retirement taxation. If you'd like to find out more about that, give me a call. 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048. And I'll tell you what I mean by strategic movement around retirement taxation. As I mentioned about a GPS, I use a financial tool that takes into account all these things: Social Security planning, timing, healthcare cost planning, pensions, expenses, expected return on your investments, sequence of return risks. That's a subject for another entire show. So as I mentioned before, step one of the 3 steps was knowing exactly what an ideal retirement is going to cost you. Step 2, determining what resources you're going to need to pay for these. If you've got guaranteed sources such as Social Security and things like that, great. One thing about Social Security, it's kind of tricky. That's why I use a special timing report that really shows all the options, because you have Medicare coming out of that. There are so many people that leave so much of their own money on the table by not maximizing those Social Security decisions. Inflation's going to play a role, because when you look at consumer price index, senior consumer price index, healthcare costs, all these things add up. And what is $1 today won't be $1 in the future. We all know that. So this is not an easy part. This is really sitting down. And this is why doing it yourself is so tough, because You can sit down and read all the books. For example, anybody who's been in my office sees a fairly decent library. It's not even close to the number of books that I've read in my career, but they can go through all those books. I can even show them a stack they can read if they want to do it themselves, or they can search around and find somebody they feel some trust with and then use them to be that GPS. But regardless, you got to remember, a comfortable retirement is dictated by your income and not your assets. And that's why as you retire and as you transition retirement, total return is income plus growth. And the key to a successful retirement is invest for the I and not the G. Invest for the income and not the growth once you get in retirement. So you hear all this, well, if you put aside $1 million, then you take out a certain percentage, then you have a reasonable chance of not outliving your money. Yeah, it's true, but are you aware that's been reduced? That Morningstar just reduced that to just under 3%, like 2.88%, I believe is the number they came up with. And it used to be 5 at one time, then it was 4. So just a random mathematical calculation doesn't cut it. Our market's so volatile for many reasons now that using the old tools may not get you the results you're looking for. I've covered many things, calculating what your expenses are going to be, then calculating where your income's coming from. And what I do for my clients is really take those retirement dreams and help them turn them into reality based on some solid numbers, some solid work, a process they can identify with. Because it's not just picking the right investments. It's about working with an advisor who has a process that addresses the needs of retirees, not just an order taker who's always looking for the greatest return somewhere, because we all know how the markets are. So it's all about a GPS income strategy. And that's one of the things that I've been talking about. So think about this. When we transition into retirement, most people spend more time every year planning their vacation than they do their retirement. So that's why you got to be asking yourself questions. What are you going to be spending your time and money on? Where that money is going to come from? How long your nest egg is going to last? And a big question, you're going to live into your 90s or even 100. Those are critical steps. I mentioned steps 1 and 2, but the third step is a comfortable retirement strategy and finding out what is the best way to fill in the gaps. As we talked about expenses and then guaranteed income sources, some people don't have a gap. Congratulations. Some people do. Where's it going to come from? And there are ways to calculate that, and there are ways to fix that. One of the key things is when you look above your guaranteed sources of income, are you counting on all your retirement income to come from the stock market itself? Well, we all know what 2000 was like in 2008. So if you're trying to beat the S&P, even 85% of mutual fund managers can't do that on a consistent basis. So what's the final destination for your money? I have some clients that are very risk averse, and some feel like, hey, look, I've got my guaranteed income sources covered. I can take some risks. And the key to that is once we've sat down and calculate all that out, then you can make those kind of educated choices, those educated decisions. So just because you got the money doesn't mean you should be taking unlimited risk trying to beat the market. Because if you're trying to beat the S&P every year, you're going to fail. Unfortunately, the years you fail might be pretty serious. So when you think about it like this, you're getting near retirement. It's almost like you're in the fourth quarter. There's 10 minutes left in the game. You're 2 touchdowns ahead. Now, let me ask you a question. Do I go to the air and go for the passes? Or do I grind it out on the ground, get reasonable yardage each time I carry the ball, move the ball forward, and burn the clock out? It's your decision. Because you throw that touchdown, you can also throw an interception. That long pass can be a touchdown or an interception. So keep that in mind. Are you taking unnecessary risk?
A message from Brad Williams Financial Services, LLC, right here in Huntsville.
Is your financial advisor performance-driven or purpose-driven? What I mean is, when you meet with them, is it all about returns and numbers, or is it about you, your family, and your quality of life? Do they know your goals, your aspirations, and the desires you have that you hope your money can achieve? Did they even ask? Is your financial advisor a partner in your retirement, or just someone who sends you reports? If you're looking for an advisor to be more of a partner for you and your spouse in retirement, call Brad Williams Financial Services at 844-343-6048. Call today and schedule a free 1-hour, no obligation consultation to discuss your goals and aspirations and see if we're a good fit. That's 844-343-6048.
Have you missed any of today's show? Would you like to listen to past shows? We've got you covered 24/7. Visit AskBradShow.com. That's AskBradShow.com. Thanks for listening to our show today. For baby boomers, here's something to think about. Will you have enough income during your retirement? Are you absolutely sure? Do you understand the difference between growth and income? How about bonds and bond funds? Are you 100% ready for RMDs? Do you have an estate plan? If you've said no to any of these, we can help. Right now, for the first 5 callers, we'll send you a free custom-designed animated video retirement kit to help you plan for the retirement you've worked so long and so hard for. These custom video kits are loaded with cutting-edge retirement technology, custom designed to your specific areas of need. There's nothing else like them. So call right now to receive your very own custom-designed animated video retirement kit. Call 844-343-6048. That's 844-343-6048.
All right, now that we're back, now, for some of you listening right now, I know this is a wake-up call. I know a lot of these things maybe you've thought in your mind, but really haven't verbalized to your spouse, or maybe you have talked about it, and good for you. The key is to start taking steps today and start working to put your ducks in a row, get your bases covered. Figure out what date you'd like to retire. What's the fallback date? What's the secondary date, the tertiary date? There could be things that happen in the interim, family things or health things or any number of things that cause that retirement to be delayed. A stock market crash. So keeping those things in mind. What I often tell people is when you go from the accumulation stage to the distribution stage, and that's what you're doing when you go from the earning income stage to the retirement stage, there should be what I call the preservation stage, that middle stage, whether it's 3, 5, 6 years, whatever that may be for you, where you're making the decisions, you're de-risking the portfolio, you're starting to change how you invest, you're investing more for the eye, more for income and less for growth. And so these are the questions you need to be asking yourself and asking each other. Now, would love to talk to you about that. And that's what I specialize in, is helping people in that transition to have a written plan, to look at the factors, the variables, to have addressed them, to look at their Social Security, to figure out when they're going to claim it. What is the right pension option when you retire? Where should the money come from? How should that be invested? These are the questions you need to be asking yourself. And if you're going in and you're meeting with your advisor and you're not addressing these, maybe you got the wrong advisor. So if that's the case, I would love to spend a free hour with you, 844-343-6048. Just give us a call, 844-343-6048. And we'll be happy to sit down and discuss these things, discuss philosophies, and figure out, are you on the right path? And even if I'm not the right guy for you, it's always good to get a second opinion. So I'm put that offer on the table. So again, thank you for listening. I hope this show today was helpful. I hope you have a great week.
That's all the time we have for today. To learn more about Brad Williams Financial Services or to set up a complimentary review,
call 844-343-6048. That's 844 888-343-6048.
Investment advisory services offered through Sound Income Strategies, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisory firm. Brad Williams Financial Services and Sound Income Strategies, LLC are not associated entities.